Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of the hour. The US Senate has voted to pass the Department of Defense budget bill for fiscal year 2026, which included the repeal of the Caesar Act imposed on Syria since 2019. The bill won the support of 77 senators as Syria's Minister of Foreign Affairs and expatriates Hassan al-Shibani thanked the US Senate. President Donald Trump delivers a speech from the White House highlighting his achievements and setting out parts of his agenda for the year ahead. He blames former President Joe Biden for immigration and inflation problems as polls show public frustration with the economy. European leaders are locked in intense talks over how to finance continued support for Ukraine, with Belgium emerging as a key holdout amid concerns over financial and legal risks. Taiwan says the United States is moving ahead with an $11.1 billion arms package, the largest ever for the island. The deal, the second under President Trump's current administration, comes as China steps up military pressure on Taiwan. Israeli troops fire a mortar over the ceasefire line into a Palestinian residential area in Gaza, wounding at least 10 people according to health officials. The Israeli military says the round veers off course during an operation near the so-called Yellow Line and says the incident is under investigation. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese pledges to intensify efforts against hate speech following a deadly attack on a Hanukkah celebration at Sydney's Bondi Beach. The attack, which killed 15 people, including 10-year-old Matilda, has also raised concerns over rising anti-Semitism. Thousands of Hondurans rally at the presidential residence in support of the ruling Libre Party in Honduras. President Xiomara Castro accuses election authorities of manipulation and warned of an electoral coup targeting her party. Google unveils its new Gemini 3 Flash model aiming to challenge OpenAI and rivals with a faster, cheaper AI. The model combines Gemini 3 Pro's reasoning power with efficiency, becoming the default in the Gemini app and Google's AI search mode. We start this hour in Europe once again, and European leaders are in a high-stakes discussion over financing Ukraine amid Russia's ongoing aggression. Lithuania's president emphasized the need to make Russia feel the cost of its actions, while Finland and Sweden's leaders strongly pushed for using frozen Russian assets to fund Ukraine's reparations, arguing it's preferable to tapping EU funds. The debate has hit a snag, with Belgium expressing concerns over this approach, prompting technical discussions and negotiations to find a compromise. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen stressed the urgency of closing Ukraine's financial gap, insisting that risk sharing is crucial if a reparations loan is approved. With tensions high, EU leaders described the summit as the most important since the war began, vowing to not leave without a solution. We're now joined by Major General Gigi Davidi, an international affairs expert and defense analyst, joining us live from New Delhi. People are calling this the most important summit since the war began. Is that true, and how likely is this notion to be approved, given the risk, mainly to Belgium, but of course to the entire European Union?
Well, Thomas, firstly, always a pleasure to be on NewsX World. You are right that this summit is very crucial and comes at a very critical time, because as per President Trump, the agreement, peace agreement, is very close, and at the same time we have to understand the larger geopolitics that while there are differences on the peace proposal as far as Russia or Ukraine is concerned, but I think signs are that the peace proposal is possibly going to materialize sometime soon. Now, this summit at Brussels is very crucial because it involves funding of Ukraine reconstruction because in the 4 years, almost 4 years of war, Ukraine has been devastated and its infrastructure and its economy has taken a big hit. Now the European unions are divided. While they are on, there's a consensus that Ukraine needs funds, but how the funding is to be done, that's a big question. And there's no consensus on that because there are two or three options available. One is by the President of European Council, Ursula. Uh, she has proposed that there are two possible ways the funding can be done. One is that you dig into the European budget or adopt the repatriation loan. The other one is that to use the funds, frozen funds, Russian frozen funds, which are almost to the tune of $245 billion. But again, here, there's no consensus because
Yes.
Belgium is very much opposed to it, as also the other European countries like Sweden, and they see that there is a risk involved if you tap into the frozen funds. So the point is that this crucial meeting will ultimately have to come to some consensus. And as far as the president of the European Commission is concerned, she has made a very categorical statement that we are not going to come out of the meeting until we have reached a consensus on providing funds to
Yes.
Ukraine, and that is the current situation. But suffice to say, there's no consensus, but consensus will have to be built during this crucial meeting. Thomas.
Yes, and supporters say of this, say using Russian assets is morally justified, of course, given Russia's invasion of Ukraine. However, opponents warn it could undermine confidence in Europeans' financial systems. Which risk is greater long term? The threat of a Russian encroachment into Europe or the loss of confidence in the 27 bloc's finance hubs?
Well, the point is that the both issues are valid. Firstly, yes, morally, the funds can be used for reconstruction of Ukraine because, after all, the war was started by Russia, and Russia has taken a very heavy toll of the Ukrainian infrastructure and also the resources. So, morally, yes, there is a green light on that, or it is acceptable. But you have to also see the technical issues because there are technicalities involved, and technicalities means that these funds may be released, may not be released, get into the legalities, and also it is dividing the European Union 27 countries because there is no consensus because of the technical and the risk involved. So the point is that this issue is very sensitive. It's a complex issue, but the more countries are of the consensus that let's not get involved into the frozen funds of Russia and let's tap the European Union resources because that may be neater. But the issue is there are two sides to it, and both sides have pros and cons. Thomas.
Yes, do stay with us, Major General Davidi. We have further updates to discuss. We move next to the developing situation in Australia, and the Philippines National Security Advisor says that there is no evidence indicating that the two suspects involved in the Bondi Beach attack received any form of military training while in the Philippines. Eduardo Ano says that a mere visit to the country does not substantiate allegations of terrorist training. He also noted that the duration of their stay would not have permitted any meaningful or structured training. According to ANO, the government is investigating the two men's travel from November the 1st to the 28th and coordinating with Australian authorities to determine the purpose of the visit, dismissing media reports portraying the southern Philippines as a hotspot for violent extremism as outdated and misleading. The alleged father and son gunmen opened fire on a Hanukkah celebration at Sydney's Bondi Beach on Sunday, killing 15 in an attack that shocked Australia and heightened fears of anti-Semitism and violent extremism. We are once again joined by Major General Davidi. The Philippines does say that there is no evidence that these suspects received any kind of military training while in their country. How significant is that statement in shutting down speculation, and what are the possible situations that could have led those two suspects to the Philippines for such a long amount of time?
Absolutely, Thomas. Given the credentials of the father-son duo, well, the visit to Philippines, which is almost of 4 weeks duration, needs to be investigated because the contradictory reports have been that they've received training, especially not in the handling of firearms, but in the indigenous, improvised explosives, because that's a technical issue, how you make an improvised explosive device. Now, that has to be seen in entirety, and I think the investigation must go deeper. But the point is, as far as small arm handling is concerned, Sajid Akram had 6 weapons. So I am sure that he would be quite expert in using the weapons, and these weapons are used basically for the hunting. But the point is that basic use of weapon, I am sure he would have had the expertise. So also his son. But more importantly is there indoctrination, is there further radicalization, or was the training on the explosive fabrication of explosive devices that need to be gone into, because the issue is very sensitive, and it has far-reaching implications, because there could be other people also involved. So this has the ramification of the larger network, and why the visit was taken, the timing of the visit, and then immediately followed by the shooting. I think these dots need to be joined to get to the root of the issue. Thomas.
Yes. Do stay with us once again as we have further stories. China has voiced strong diplomatic support for Venezuela following a total and complete naval blockade of sanctioned oil tankers ordered by US President Donald Trump, while Beijing also condemned the move as unilateral bullying. Earlier this week, US President Donald Trump ordered a complete blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers attempting to leave Venezuelan waters and those arriving as Washington massed troops and warships in the region. According to experts, China is the biggest buyer of Venezuelan crude, which accounts for roughly 4% of its imports, with shipments in December on track to average more than 600,000 barrels per day. Major General Davidi joins us once again. There was expectation that this was going to happen sooner or later. China, of course, along with Russia and other nations, traditionally huge allies of Venezuela. But why has China chosen now to step in?
Well, Thomas, the tension between Venezuela and US has been rising over a period of time, because President Trump has taken a very hard line. And therefore, this blockade that has been imposed, which implies that it is sanctioning all the oil tankers which are either entering the Venezuelan waters or leaving. So therefore, when the sanctions are imposed, then they'll have to be also operationalized. That means that the naval ships that are gathered there, they will interfere in case they find that this sanction is being impinged or being violated. Well, as you rightly brought out, that China is a very big buyer of Venezuelan oil at almost like 4%, more than half a billion barrels per day. So therefore, it has very high stakes in the Venezuelan oil and energy sector. And that's why their foreign minister Wang Yi had a conversation with his counterpart, a Venezuelan counterpart, and expressed his full support and even obliquely said that bullying of this kind is not acceptable, and Venezuela has the full right to cooperate and do business with the countries that it so desires. So the point at issue is China has high stakes. Now that sanctions have been imposed, this will impinge the Chinese import of oil from Venezuela, and that's why Chinese leadership has come very strongly in support of Venezuela so that their supply of oil is not interrupted, and it's a huge amount they are importing, about 500,000 barrels per day. So therefore, I think that's why this timing has been chosen to bring pressure on China and also to express support to Venezuela that China stands with them. Thomas.
Yes, thank you very much, Major General Gigi Davidi, for joining us here on NewsX World. It's always a pleasure to get your insight. We now move on to our next story and over to Africa. And major cities in Sudan, including the capital, Khartoum, and Port Sudan, have plunged into darkness after deadly drone strikes targeted a key power plant in the east of the country. As per reports, strikes targeted transformers at the El Mukrin power station in the city of Atbara in the River Nile state. An initial strike targeted the plant and a second strike hit rescue workers. The strikes have reportedly killed 2 rescuers and have left 1 person injured. Witnesses reported seeing flames and smoke rising in Atbara, which is controlled by the army in its ongoing war with the Rapid Support Forces. The damaged power station is a strategic hub in the Sudanese electricity grid, receiving power generated by the Marawi Dam, the country's largest source of hydroelectricity energy. Since April 2023, Sudan's regular army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces have been locked in a brutal conflict that has killed tens of thousands of people, displaced 12 million and more, and devastated infrastructure. Ayanuga Olugbenga Paul joins us now, a public affairs analyst, joining us live from Lagos in Nigeria. Thank you very much for joining us here on the program. Of course,
thank you so much.
The humanitarian situation is rife in Khartoum and Port Sudan, and of course around that region, due to the advancement of the RSF's forces. What more can you tell us about the developments on the ground, both in regards to the military and, of course, the humanitarian situation?
Well, as regards to the humanitarian situation, it's getting worse by the day, especially with this latest attack on the power infrastructure in the country. You know that since the war began, there has been shortage of power supply to strategic locations, especially hospitals and high-value government targets within the nation. So with this recent attack now, that it has led to almost total outage and more rationing of the power that are available for supply in the nation. And this will definitely affect those who are in the hospital at the moment, those who are using electricity to power some of the machines that keeps them alive, newborn babies, the old and the aged, and so much more. And of course, the corresponding damage to the economy is what they would not be able to picture right now, because in terms of the cost, we can't easily evaluate, because for every day the port shuts down and goods and services are not able to move. It does not just affect Sudan, it also affects the neighboring country where many of the shipping lines would have to reroute to now in order to keep up with their schedule and be able to get things going in the country. And this shows the exact reason why the RSF and the Sudanese forces had to sign a pact.
Yes, and of course,
what do you call it, last week, their major refinery, because it is this kind of situation they were trying to prevent from happening in their major refinery. That's why they asked the Southern Sudan forces to go there as a neutral force to protect the place.
yes, and Ayanuga, What's the end goal here for the RSF? Of course, we've seen no stop atrocities. We've seen advancements against the Sudanese army. In regards to long-standing, how much further do their military capabilities go, and can we expect them to take further territory?
Well, I expect them to take further territory. I think their long goal is to take the capital and take over government from the government forces. And with the way they are going, if we are not careful, they will be able to take the capital in a matter of days or months from what it seems there are people within the Sudanese armed forces who are sympathetic towards the RSF and thereby giving the RSF some of the advantages that they are enjoying at the moment. And this will definitely help them win on the long run against the army. And this is just what we have seen taking place in Syria. It is the same modus operandi, the same thing in Afghanistan recently when the Taliban came in almost unopposed with many of the forces on ground in the Afghanistan government, supporting the Taliban. And we have seen it all through history, that this is like a playbook that repeats itself.
Yes, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World, Ayanuga. As always, it's a pleasure to get your insight on these issues. We now move on over to Latin America, and Ecuadorian footballer Mario Pineda has been shot and killed in the port city of Guayaquil as violence continues to surge across the country. Police say the 33-year-old Barcelona de Guayaquil defender was attacked by two gunmen on a motorcycle who opened fire on him, his mother and another woman. Pineda and another unidentified person were also killed, while a third victim was wounded. Pineda was a well-known figure in Ecuadorian football. He began his career at an Independent del Valle, later winning 2 league titles with Barcelona de Guayaquil, and spent a brief spell with Brazil's Fluminense. He also earned 9 caps for Ecuador's national team. The killing comes amid Ecuador's worst wave of violence on record, with over 9,000 homicides expected this year, much of it linked to organised crime and drug trafficking. Let's listen in.
Bueno, el día de hoy, aproximadamente a las 16 horas, en el sector de Sauce 6, se produce este hecho delictivo en Cárnicos, en donde 2 sujetos a bordo de motocicletas atentan contra la vida de 2 personas de sexo masculino y sexo femenino. Luego de haber verificado ya con los documentos que traía personalmente, así como con los familiares, se trataría del señor jugador de Barcelona, Mario.
We stay in the region for our next story, and hundreds of thousands of Hondurans rallied at the presidential residence in support of the ruling Libre Party. President Xiomara Castro accused election authorities of manipulation and warned of an electoral coup targeting her party. Castro also criticized US President Donald Trump for endorsing a rival candidate and threatening to pardon former President Juan Orlando Hernandez. The special audit of the late November presidential election remains stalled amid protests blocking the electoral center, delaying a final result. With nearly all votes tallied, right-wing candidate Nasri Asfura leads by over 43,000 votes against centrist Salvador Nasrallah. Let's listen in to some of the supporters.
Bueno, desde un inicio, cuando las elecciones, miramos nosotros la intromisión de Donald Trump, ¿verdad? Que no tiene que meterse, tiene que respetar los convenios internacionales para no permitir y no estarse metiendo en los países donde no tiene nada que ver con nosotros acá. Los pueblos ya no queremos la intervención, ya no queremos ser esclavos, nosotros los pueblos ya no queremos ser colonia de los Estados Unidos, nosotros queremos ser un pueblo independiente.
Bueno, la verdad es que sí nos da tristeza, ¿verdad? Tanta injerencia internacional porque como decía el compañero, nosotros somos libres, soberanos, independientes, ¿verdad? Como país. Y la verdad que no podemos permitir el pueblo, que tiene que respetarse el voto del pueblo, y por eso andamos haciendo la lucha, ¿verdad?
Saudi Arabia's largest telecom operator, STC, has announced a joint venture with AI firm Humane to develop and operate data centers across the kingdom. Under the agreement, Humane will hold a 51% stake, while STC will own 49%. The move is part of Saudi Arabia's broader push to accelerate artificial intelligence development and reduce reliance on oil revenues. Humane, backed by the kingdom's sovereign wealth fund, has already secured partnerships with Elon Musk's XAI and Blackstone-backed Air Trunk for data center projects. The joint venture plans to build infrastructure capable of supporting up to 1 gigawatt, supporting with an initial deployment of 250 megawatts, helping Saudi Arabia meet growing demand for computing power as it seeks to diversify its economy. And that's all that we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more international updates.